Shalom, WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah Talk. This week I'm going to do something I don't do all that often. This week we are reading Parshat Tetzaveh in Shul, but I'd like to go back and tell you some of the things I said last Shabbat about Parshat Terumah. Now there's two reasons for this. One is that Tetzaveh is in some ways a continuation of Terumah. The first two of five concluding parshiot, sections of Torah in the book of Exodus, the book of Shemot, that talk about the construction of the tabernacle. So there's some continuity there. I also think some of the sentiments I shared on Shabbat, I want to make sure you get to hear and to process. The first thing I wanted to do was show you this book. This is my copy of the book Mouse. I own it because it's an important book. Right? A book that has for a long time defined part of my Jewish identity. I did not purchase it because a 10-member school board in McKinn County, Tennessee, unanimously voted that it shouldn't be read, though I was very pleased to see it back on the top of the bestseller list for the first time in decades, thanks to their efforts. There is, obviously, as has been shown over the last month or two, a great need for more education about the Shoah, about hate and racism in general. Not just for the sake of the Jews, although it probably can't hurt. But it seems that good people trying to do good need to be reminded what are the activities that maybe don't fall into that category. The activities that can never really be seen as good. Things like book banning, not generally the activities on the side of history, on the right side of history. And it is a sad sort of irony, I have to say, that within a month of this book being stricken, banned from the McKinn County 8th grade curriculum, a book inscribed with a quote from Adolf Hitler, Yimach Shemo, that says, "The Jews are undoubtedly a race, but they are not human." That very month, Whoopi Goldberg said that the Holocaust was not about race. Now look, I don't believe Whoopi Goldberg to be an anti-Semite. I'm not even an expert on her or her history, but from everything I've heard, she's been an ally of Jewish people for her whole career. So this isn't about anti-Semitism. It's about her choosing to speak out about a topic about which she's obviously underinformed. A topic that it seems the Tennessee School Board was also uninformed about. And I say this with love. I am sure there is a lot more that I can learn about modern racism as experienced by Black people. Right? And I know there's a lot for others to learn about racism as experienced by Jewish people. But that's why I don't speak out publicly about racism against Black people. So I try and stay away from topics about which I am underinformed. Other people should do the same, I believe. It is even strange to think that misinformation and misguided statements about Jews and the Holocaust may be one of the few things that Whoopi Goldberg and the members of that Tennessee school board have in common. But maybe a shared mutual misunderstanding about Jews and Jewish people, maybe that being the only thing certain communities have in common, maybe that's historically accurate also. But still, what I really want to focus on is my opening statement, which is that this book has been on my bookshelf for years, maybe even decades. It's been there because it's part of my Jewish identity. It's part of who I am. Because my parents and teachers, someone at some point decided that I should read this. They assigned it to me or they gave it to me. And therefore, it's become a part of who I am proactively as a Jew, not reacting to what anybody else is saying. And that is a very important idea. A question I think it's very important for us to ponder today. Is our Judaism a proactive Judaism or a reactive Judaism? In the parsha, we get an example of the difference in the construction of the tabernacle by none other than God. Right? God commands the Jewish people in these closing chapters of Exodus to build the tabernacle. God is very careful in his instructions, spelling it all out for the beginning half and then showing that it was done all exactly according to plan for the second half of this section, closing out the book. There's a lot of commentary about this, right? It says, God says to the people, you'll build this mikdash, this tabernacle, shechanti bitocham, that I will dwell among you. God in Tetzaveh says, I'm going to make the children of Aaron holy, that they can minister to me from this sacred state. So there will be people whose job it is just to manage this relationship. It seems very clear that God wants to have a facilitated relationship with the Jewish people, a real, physical, apparent one. The question is why? And the commentary is split about this. Some commentators say it's a reaction, right? That God is reacting to several possibilities, right? Some say that God is reacting to a slaughtering that Moses did of some animals, splashing blood everywhere, reacting to this human need for carnality in worship. And so God creates a structure for that carnality. Another possibility pointed out by Leon Kass, Dr. Leon Kass, is that this is parallel to the Tower of Babel, that people need edifices, right? Great edifices. That one, they said, we will make to make us a name, lest we be scattered across the whole of the earth. Here, God makes a different kind of edifice, dedicated to God, so that people can be focused there and not be scattered across the earth. And then there's a very popular interpretation that was been put forth by Dr. Stephen Geller, among others, Rabbi Stephen Geller, among others, that the tabernacle is a reaction to the sin of the golden calf. Now, this depends a little bit on the timeline, how you interpret the order of the events that happen in Exodus. But according to this, the idea that there are 5 parshiot, 2 about the construction of the blueprint, sort of the tabernacle, and then 2 about how they were carried out exactly, and 1 in the middle. And what's in that 1 in the middle? The story of the golden calf, that the commentary says that was made to sort of put the calf in the middle of the tabernacle, right? That the tabernacle is a protection against this kind of idolatry. So all of those are reactive reasons. But then other people interpret the tabernacle as proactive, as something that God always planned from the beginning of the Exodus, maybe even from the beginning of creation, right? In this idea, God planned Mount Sinai from the start to bring the people for this revelation. And once they were there, and this is a theory put forward by Dr. Cassuto, the lay professor of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. I learned it from Rabbi Robbie Harris, right? That in order to maintain this feeling of theophany at Sinai, once they were away and would, not have that powerful idea, that powerful mountain, that powerful image in front of them, that the tabernacle would serve to keep the presence close to them and keep them in relationship. And that was God's plan all along, says Cassuto. Another idea is that the tabernacle is closely related to the creation of the world. One line of thought is that the tabernacle is the culmination of the creation of the world, this place where God can dwell among human beings. And therefore, it was God's intention all the way from the beginning of creation to have this tabernacle. So which is it then? Is the tabernacle proactive by God or reactive by God? The truth is, I don't know the answer to that. We all have to decide which commentaries seem to make the most sense to us. However, I would like to make this observation. Listening to those explanations, the reactive need for the tabernacle is all reaction to negative, the bloodlust, the Tower of Babel, the golden calf. Right? These are things the tabernacle now reminds us of. Right? It is necessary because of these negative reasons. While the proactive reasons are all positive. A completion of creation includes the close dwelling of God and people, or that we are meant to feel close, tangibly feel God's presence in our lives and in our community. So, which would you rather have? This negative reactivity or a positive proactivity? This week, there was a lot of Jewish in the news. It's very rarely a good thing when there's a lot of Jewish in the news. There was Mouse, and there was Whoopi, and yes, there was also a despicable report by Amnesty saying that the state of Israel has no right to even exist. And of course, we're all still reeling from the synagogue attack in Colleyville. But if our Judaism is completely defined by reacting to these kinds of things, if we are just constantly chasing our tail, trying to get ahead of the next story in the news cycle that involves Jews, then we are practicing a reactive model of Judaism. Just like with the tabernacle, that is negative. Judaism will become a negative force in our lives, in the lives of our children. Something we have to defend and protect, and that causes us all kinds of problems, but has nothing positive going for it. I fear we're getting a little too close to that. We need to take a step back and take control of our Jewish identities. Refuse to be defined by the latest news cycle, the ignorance of this celebrity or that celebrity, by even the threat of anti-Semitism. There will always be those whose primary proactive feel as Jews will be to address anti-Semitism, but I don't think that's what's meant for all of us. Instead, we need to decide for ourselves what Judaism means to us, how we want God and holiness manifested in our lives and the lives of our children, and act on that proactively instead of scrambling to react to every frenetic news cycle and the sensationalism of every story all around us. That's when our Judaism can be a positive force for us in our lives, for our families, and for our community. I pray that we are all able to achieve this. We achieve it by choosing the events that are important to us. In the book Mouse, Art Spiegelman, the author, he made Parshat Terumah very important. The main character, listening to his father talk, his father mentions that Parshat Terumah was when he got out of a forced labor camp, that it was when he looked back at the calendar when he married his Anya. It was when his son was born and when his son had his bar mitzvah. Why did Art Spiegelman choose Parshat Terumah, this beginning of this sequence, Terumah, Tetzaveh, Kitisa, all leading up to the construction of the tabernacle as the parsha? The parsha that the father figure would choose, would note, was so special. I don't know for sure, but I'd like to interpret it by saying that when we choose what is important to us in our Judaism, right here is someone who was tortured terribly during the Shoah, but he's not defining his life by his time in the camps. He's defining his life by his time before and after, by the good, the simchas in his life, his wedding, his son's birth, his son's bar mitzvah. Right? He is building a tabernacle, a sanctuary for himself in his heart to gird himself against all the awful things that there are to react to in this world. And that's what we can do as well. Build ourselves a tabernacle. Build ourselves an edifice, a place that we can call sacred. And when we do that, we will bring a kind of Judaism into the world, into our communities, that will lift up our families, that will lift up our communities. It's a kind of Judaism that I want. I'm sure it's a kind of Judaism that you want. And if God's building of the tabernacle, God's instructions, spending so much time in the Torah are any indication, it's a kind of Judaism that God wants in the world as well. May we all have the power and the integrity to bring that proactive approach, the patience and equanimity not to react to every news story, but instead to put forward the Judaism that we know the world needs. And when we do, I believe, I hope, I pray that a lot of that negativity will fade away anyway. The world will be a better place, and we'll all enjoy the fruits of that labor. May it happen speedily in our days. Shabbat Shalom.